Awesome. We are live. You are live. Let's get Instagram rolling. How are you, my dear
Uh,
co-host?
I am
Welcome.
good. Happy Monday. Happy Monday, everyone. Happy Monday, Becky.
Yes, it is. It is a lovely Monday. It no, it's not too bad. It's a pretty good Monday, and I'm excited for tonight. For our special guest and
Absolutely.
everyone else joining us.
Yep. And as everyone gets going, oops, I thought I clicked go live on Instagram. Let's try that again. There we go. Hello, Instagram. Well, welcome, everyone. Welcome, YouTube. Welcome our three Facebook pages, our two Instagram pages, Twitch, Rumble, and then eventually these will be uploaded to iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So we are so excited. Both Becky and I use this person's product. We absolutely love it. We have a story to tell. We've seen Chef James Barry this last year at Hack Your Health, and we reached out, and he was so gracious to come on. So we're going to go ahead and bring him on. I'll let Becky click the button. But Chef Barry has been in the culinary field for 20 years and started out as a private chef cooking for celebrities and musicians and billionaires. And I'll let him fill you in on those folks. He's also an author of the Naked Foods Cookbook. He's also the CEO and founder of an organ based superfood seasoning called Pluck, which is the first of its kind. He's also a husband and a dad, which I suspect those are his greatest accomplishments. So, welcome.
Thank you both for having me.
Absolutely. We're so thankful you're here, and not only to discuss your product, but to discuss kind of your journey and kind of where you come from, because we talk about a lot of beyond nutrition as well, and you kind of also go into that ancestral. So I'm excited.
Well, yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, it's funny. My mom is always commenting to me. She's like, I don't know how I created a chef, because I grew up in a household where when the smoke detector went off, you knew dinner was ready. So there was no foodie isms in my house. We were very like, even though I grew up in the 70s, it was like 50s diet where it was like frozen vegetables, baked potato, and meat. That's kind of it. We did shake and bake. So there was nothing necessarily unique, very, very standard American diet. And, but I had a neighbor, had a neighbor who made things from scratch. And he really introduced me to the idea that you could do that. I mean, I remember when I went to culinary school, I was so amazed when I learned how to make hummus, because hummus to me was something that was so exotic. It was like, oh, that's just something you because keep in mind when so a lot of people are going to hear this and go like, what is he talking about? Hummus is in grocery stores. It used to not be. You know what I mean? Like it used to be. Uh, in the early 2000s, you didn't get hummus as easy as you can now. It was like you went to restaurants, Middle Eastern restaurants, you could get it, but it wasn't like this. It wasn't as accepted as it is now. And so when I learned how to make it from scratch, I just thought it was the cat's meow. I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. I thought it was so complicated, and yet it's not. It's like three or four ingredients. And it was like, it just blew open my mind to what was possible.
How neat. How fun. I remember kind of when hummus came on because I'm just a little older than you are. So yeah, 70s was the I remember our first microwave when my parents got,
Yeah.
right?
Ditto.
So yeah, food was a lot different. Of course, my parents, we canned and we had gardens and things like that because well, it was more economical at that point. But I remember the first time I had a green bean out of an actual can and not canning from growing in your garden was I think I was in high school, which is so crazy. But I was out of high school before I had my first shrimp. I grew up in the Midwest, so yeah, it was just a different world back then.
Totally different. Now I was a picky eater, so I didn't have my first taco till I was in my college age years. So it's just one of those things like to now be known as, you know, this organ meat kind of guru or master. It's just like I didn't get raised like that at all. But I think in many ways that's what makes me so qualified is because I understand picky eating. I understand not wanting to eat some of these foods. And because of my training and because of my kind of peculiarities as a chef, I really do think outside the box when I'm thinking about food. I really think about, well, how can I meet people where they are versus trying to get them to do something that may be out of their comfort zone, but more, where are you right now? And then how do I take the food that you are eating and just make it healthier? I think that's something that I was just at this conference and I saw some different food um, products, and there was this meat stick company, and they were so focused on quality, so it was really good quality, but they had some heart and liver in their stick, and I ate some and I was like, "Oh, that's strong." I could really taste it, and they were enamored with it. But what's so interesting, I think this is so important for anyone who's ever thinking about creating a product, is you may have your definition of health, you may have your idea of what you think people should be eating, but that doesn't mean people will eat it, right? So I really encourage anyone ever who's trying to think of like creating a product is you got to think about what are people eating right now? And it was so funny because even that stick company, so there's two guys, they were walking and we got in this conversation. One of them had one of the sticks. He had gotten a whole stick and he was standing in front of my booth and his other friend didn't have one. And I said, so you tasted the stick, you liked it enough to get it. And he's like, well, I didn't really taste it. And then he starts eating the stick in front of me. And I'm like, well, you still don't taste it? And he's like, no, not really. And then his other friend was like, oh, I tasted it and I'm not going to eat it. And then the guy eating the stick was finished the stick and he's like, "Oh, now I taste it." And I'm like, "Okay. So now that you taste it, you did eat a whole stick. How quickly are you gonna eat another stick? Like, is this something you would buy in the future?" And he's like, "Nope, not again." And to me, that's one of the biggest issues we have in the health field right now is that instead of meeting people where they are, we're trying to get them out of comfort zones, but we all know we're all human. And it's kind of a given that at one point, life is going to go sideways, in your week, right? You're going to have just kind of an emotional day, something. And if that health modality that you're trying to focus on, that healthy diet, whatever it is that you're trying to focus on, is not delicious and is hard to do, I guarantee you will fall off. Guaranteed. And that to me is a shame because if health is not a lifestyle, then what are we doing?
And that's exactly. You have to be able to make it sustainable. If you're white knuckling your way through or you're eating bland, foods, we'll just say chicken breast, for instance, right? Because that's the first thing that kind of pops in my mind when I think of bland, unless I put the zesty garlic on it. But, it's one of those things where am I going to eat it every day? Am I going to, I don't know kind of your full background as far as what you're incorporating. I do, but I don't. So I'm going to go on a limb and say with an organ-based seasoning, you're probably not just carnivore. I'm sure you do more of the ancestral eating since that is kind of speaking topic and your podcast. But with that being said, there is such a push right now for, only eating meats because plants are going to kill you.
Yeah, no, so that is an interesting one, and it's a very confusing one. So anyone watching or listening to this, it's like if you're feeling confused, by all these influencers saying things that you didn't grow up learning, I get it. It's like it's just it sometimes feels like we are making things a lot harder than they have to be. There is a food and archaeologist named Dr. Bill Schindler. He wrote a book called Eat Like a Human. And he has a quote that says, "We are the only species in the world that looks to someone else to tell us what to eat." And that always floors me when I say it, because there's over 9 million species. So clearly we used to know. Like, we're not, yeah, we have a bigger brain than some of them do, but we're not that, we came, we're not that different. You know what I mean? Like, we're animals still. So clearly we knew. And how I kind of like to focus on, and it's actually Bill also talks about like this, we're very similar in this way, is we don't necessarily focus too much on what you're eating. I mean, I think it's important to be mindful of what you eat, but we're more focused on how you eat it. So, for example, if you are eating grains and that feels good in your body, then I would offer that you should be soaking those grains before you cook them. And then when you do cook them, maybe add a little bit of seaweed. That's going to help as well. There's different things you can do to help. You can sprout those grains. You can do things to make it more digestible and the nutrients in those grains easily absorbed. So, this idea that this is, one food is good and other foods are bad is very false. You can make an argument against or for any food, not just, you know, animal meat versus vegetable. There is no versus. You can make, like, there is not one size fits all. I mean, I know a lot, like, I'll use beef as an example. So anyone saying like beef is all you should be eating, well, there are people that have gotten Lyme disease that actually get allergic to beef. So what are they supposed to do? You
Yep,
know?
the
And then
alpha-gal.
there's people that are that are vegetarian or vegan, and they're eating all that spinach and they're eating it raw, and then they're like very nutrient deficient. Well, it's because it's hard to absorb that spinach when it's not cooked, right? So there's all these. You could make up so many different reasonings for why you should or shouldn't be eating something. But what I like to focus on, and why the podcast is called Everyday Ancestral, and why I'm so focused on like taking the best of like the past and bringing it to our present, is because there's one person in our sphere that will never lie to us, never ever lie to us. And it's probably the one where we're not listening to them, much at all, and it's our body. So I don't care what soapbox anyone is on around their diet. If you're eating that diet because you think, let's say, so and so influencer said I should be eating this way, or I think this is better for the planet, right? But then your body is inflamed and you've got rashes and your hair is falling out or you're bloated all the time. That is your body telling you what you're doing is not working. And that's who we should be listening to, not that influencer on social media and not that book we read that has nothing to do with anything. So it's like, that's really the mission I'm on, is I'm trying to support people and be more mindful of what they put in their mouth and how their body responds to it.
Absolutely. So I was listening to another podcast that you were on, and you were asked what is the lingual neuro response. And I loved what you said because you tied it right back into your product. Can you go ahead and tell us more about that for our audience?
Yeah, sure. So we're basically an Homo sapien body, and the Homo sapien body is developed hundreds of thousands of years ago. I mean, it's not a recent thing. We've gotten, this body was shaped by things we did that long ago. Our ancestors did that long ago. And Bill Schindler will say, well, what one of the things, or a few of the things they did, our ancestors did, that helped develop the body that we now have, is they ate blood, organs, and fat. And it was the nutrients in those three things that our species had not really gotten much of before that period of time, that allowed our brains to get bigger and then we got speech, and then we had tools, and then it was also around that time that we got fire. So there's all these things that started to happen as we got these kind of power packs of nutrients that changed our bodies. Well, if you think about it, back in the day, there was really two main communication points when it came to food. So it doesn't matter if you're a forager, a hunter, scavenger, it doesn't matter. These were the basic two communication points. Is this food going to nourish me or is it going to kill me? That's it. Right. And so our bodies developed a communication system to inform us, is this going to kill me or is it going to nourish me? And so if you look at the flavors that our bodies are conditioned towards tasting, well, there's the four we grew up learning in school. There's the salty, sweet, bitter, sour. And then there's one they discovered in the 90s called umami. And then now they're even realizing there's kind of a sixth. And that sixth one is when something's turned and gone bad, it has its own taste. So if you think about it from that perspective of like, well, what are all these tastes? What are they communicating to us? Well, salt is clearly one of the ways that we get energy, right? Our cells get energy through electrolytes and things like, salt's going to do stuff like that. Bitterness is usually a lot of times that would is a sign that the food might be not good for you because it might have some chemical or property in it, like that's going to make you sick or kill you. You had sugar was a form of informing you of like, oh, there's nutrition in this. So it's going to be something that's going to nourish you potentially. So they each had some communication point. But the key is we only got that communication if we used those senses, if we actually ate the food. And now you skip ahead to where we are now. And I mean, there's people taking, I think Dave Asprey talks about how he takes like 140 capsules or pills a day, and think about even in my life, like I think I swallow about at least 20 or 23 capsules a day. You know what I mean? So it's like, and that's because I'm doing blood markers and I'm constantly, every year I'm working on making sure that I'm optimizing. Sadly, we live in a world where, our soils are depleted. The duration between they're picking vegetables and fruits before they're ripened. There's travel time to get to the store. They're even identifying more and more like things like, let's say like broccoli, that by the time you pick it from the store, it's already lost a lot of its nutrition. And then you bring it home and you leave it in your drawer. And then maybe 2, 3, 4 days later, you eat it and it has zero nutrition. They're actually now realizing like, we're not getting any nutrition from these very common foods that we've been raised on. And so that's why, we are taking these supplements. But one of my big messages, and I'll step back into the neurolingual response in a second just to flesh that out. But since I'm already here, one of the reasons I'm really into organ meats is because that is Mother Nature's multivitamin. And we're already slaughtering that animal. And yet I have been to slaughterhouses. I went to this one in Wyoming and I flat out asked them, I said, so when you slaughter this animal, what are you doing with all the offal, all the parts that aren't muscle and aren't bone? And he said, well, we're not set up to use them. So we throw them out.
Wow.
And, when you do the percentages, they're throwing out about 48% of that animal. And I don't know what industry would ever throw out 48% of its resources, right? So what is happening right now in our modern society is we are focusing on muscle meat, which is nutritious, but it's still missing certain things. And then what we're doing is we're eating however we eat. We're still nutrient deficient. Then we're turning to a supplement company to get that nutrition. And a lot of times that's synthetic. It's not even found in nature. So then you don't even know how much of it you're absorbing. If if you've ever taken a lot of pills and noticed how quickly you have to pee, that's you peeing a lot of it out because you're getting too much of it, or it's not getting absorbed. And that's why we call it expensive pee, because you basically took all these capsules and it's just leaving your body. And so I look at that system, that supply chain of food, and I'm like, this is insanity. Like, why are we not just eating the whole animal the way our ancestors did, the way Native Americans did, the way all these other societies did that really did seem to be healthier than us? Now, I know you could argue and say, well, maybe they weren't healthier. They just didn't know how to measure, these things, but they seemed healthier. I mean, I know we're living longer, but we're not thriving as we live longer. We're sick and living longer. I think it's very arguable that certain societies that are not eating standard American diet, but are eating what they locally produce, and they're eating more of the whole animal, that their quality of life is a lot higher than ours. So I'm just a big fan of, like, let's look towards Mother Nature as much as possible. And whole animal nutrition, for my 20 years in the business, is the one that I believe is the most efficient source of these nutrients, the most easily absorbed, and we're already killing the animal. So let's just honor that animal and use as much of it as we can. And so my job, since becoming a father, really, that's what really kickstarted my mission to help people eat whole animal. Is my job is to basically meet you where you are. So I get it. For example, with organ meats, I know there's hurdles. I know people are like, oh, they're gross, or I don't know how to cook them. When I do, it's just chalky and the texture's horrible. I don't like to touch them. Like, I get it. There's lots of hurdles. But that's my job, is I'll figure out those hurdles for you and I'll meet you where you are. So my job is, I want to get you those organ meats. So the question I was asking myself 5 years ago was, okay, how do I get the Mother Nature's most nutrient dense food into you? I have to solve those hurdles. And so I knew I had to make them taste good. I knew I had to make them easy, because it's the cooking and it's the prep. It's all that stuff, the touching, the difference between muscle and organs, like the texture of those. So I needed to solve that. And then I needed to also make it not a new habit, because I know that when it's a new habit, it falls off. And we all saw that during COVID, right? I mean, like, when we got scared, people got scared, or that we were in uncomfortable territory, what industry increased? Alcohol sales increased, baking, sugar, desserts all increased, drug use increased, like all these foods that basically, or behaviors that supported people's, checking out, and or comfort foods. So it just tells you that, okay, if we want to meet people where they're at, then humanness likes comfort. So how do I make these nutrient-dense foods adaptable to those comfort foods? And that's where I came up with Pluck, which is basically, for those that may not know, I took the freeze-dried powdered organ meats that already were out there. They were in capsules mostly, and so it's already like a modern technique of preservation that's being used. And I was like, well, we have this already, but I don't want to do a capsule, as we've already identified. I want to eat it, because I want to tap that neurolingual response. I want my body to tell me when enough is enough, or how much do I need of whatever it is I'm eating. I don't want the bottle to tell me, because the bottle just wants to sell bottles, right? So that's where I want that neurolingual response. And I always kind of use this as an example, but like, I feel like it's the most relatable. It's like salt, because we've all put salt on our tongue at one point. You dip your finger in the salt. The first time you normally do it, tastes really good. But the third or fourth time, your taste buds get blown out, and the flavor of the salt changes. It actually starts to not taste good. That is the neural lingual response. That is your body telling you, I'm done, stop, right? But if you swallow a salt tablet, You get zero communication. 20, 30 minutes later, you're like, why do I feel so bloated? Oh, I got too much salt because I took those tablets, right? And everyone can identify with it. How many times have people taken pills or capsules and felt nauseous? It's usually because you're getting something you more than you need, and or they're fat soluble and you didn't eat them with any food.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's just we're bypassing what our body has used historically to communicate what it needs to thrive, and to tell you also when to stop, because it, when it has nutrition, the body will literally tell you when it's good, but you just got to eat mindfully enough. And I use mindfully as like eat slow enough for the body to communicate that. And then you want to just choose really nutrient dense foods like organ meats and other real foods. I always like to identify it like you want foods that are ingredients versus have ingredients, but just single ingredient foods, and you control the recipes, you control the formulas. You cook from home so that you can be mindful of the ingredients, and then just make your food. And if you're someone who doesn't like to cook, that's okay. You don't have to like to cook. Just because we have to eat does not mean you have to like to cook. And that is a big pressure people put on themselves. And I'm just like, everyone's just got to chill out. When we say like, I love French fries, and they put all this emphasis on food, I'm like, even as a chef, I go, let's chill out for a second. I want you to put that energy towards people. I love community. I love my wife. I love my kids. Yes, put that energy towards people, but food and people should not have the same emphasis. And what we're doing right now is we're putting all that energy towards, these other things, these lifestyle things like the food or the drugs or the whatever it is. And then what you have is you get addiction, and you get people obese and overeating and not being mindful of how does my body feel as I eat these things.
Well, and it ends up and it creates a circus in your head, essentially, is what I call it, a monkey mind, because you're constantly thinking of it. When you put that much emphasis and that much focus on just the food, it ends up and it starts to control you. You don't have that food freedom. You're no longer looking at food for the nourishment that it's giving your body. And I wholeheartedly agree with you on supplements. I am
Oh, yeah.
I am the biggest like anti-supplement person. There are some out there that are needed in situational aspects, but many of them are replacing allopathic medicine with supplements, and it's one of my biggest pet peeves, but I won't go into
Absolutely.
that. But
And one of the things too that we forget, and it's so hard for me to not think about this stuff, but historically in Western medicine, just in medicine, the world of medicine, if you look back in history at any given moment, we thought we knew everything. Like I use this example like with George Washington. So he died. So at the time, the modern science of the time was bloodletting. And he got a cold. Well, they didn't know it was a cold. He had an ailment, and so they bloodlet him, and he died. That's how he died, through the modern medicine of the time. And now they look back and they've done, what they can do with all the modern techniques we have now, and they realize, well, actually he actually probably only had a common cold, and had they just left him alone, he would have recovered. But I always think about that though, because I'm like, well, but the modern medicine at the time thought that they knew what they were doing. So if that was true then, why wouldn't it be true now? Like we always are learning new things. And so I just believe that we have to be mindful of the fact that even the things we think we know, we have to be open to being wrong. If we're not wrong, great. Your body will tell you you're not wrong. But I almost believe we should be open to the fact that we could be wrong, and to be just kind of gracious and open to the fact that we don't know everything. We're still learning. But I bring this up because there was a time when they used to give iron pills, and it was just there's no cofactor in it. There was no there was nothing in it to support absorption because they didn't know. So people are swallowing all these iron pills, and they were getting nothing from it except loss of financial finances, right? And then they learned, oh well, you need it to be this type of iron, and then you need to have a cofactor with it to help absorb, and they've learned that with other vitamins and minerals as well. So they're still learning, but guess who already knows it, who doesn't need to redefine anything? In Mother Nature. Mother Nature, in the form of organ meats, already has the cofactors in the organ meats. So everything you need to make the vitamins and minerals as absorbable and as efficient as possible, they're all there. Like B vitamins, for example, I said earlier, B vitamins are fat soluble. When you take a B vitamin, you should be eating food. Well, but they're in the organ meats, and it is a food. Iron, we talked about. Iron. It's supported with magnesium as well. Like there's the vitamin A. Vitamin A is really high in liver, but vitamin A is more easily absorbed when D is also combined with it. Well, one tip you can do is there are certain organs that do have D in them. It's not necessarily the ones most people are eating, but what you can also do is you just cook it in lard, because lard is high in vitamin D.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So there's things that you can do if you just know. You either have some ancestral knowledge or just a little bit more knowledge around, some of the modern science around it. But most of all, by focusing on those Mother Nature created foods, those real foods, nutrient dense foods, it's almost like you can just like sit back and enjoy, and savor that food that you are eating, and trust that Mother Nature knows what she's doing.
So it's funny. So last year at Hack Your Health in Austin, you did a cooking demo. And so my husband and I, we sat in on it because you were right there in the picture. You're holding a tongue, right? You pass that around for people to touch. I remember all of this, and it was really informational, but it was good. There I am trying. I believe that was the frozen raw liver,
Yeah.
and it was good. Shocking. I'm not an organ meat person. I don't know how to fix it. Mom made, liver and onions growing up, and it stunk the house up, and we refused to eat it as kids. So this was like huge, and my husband and I, which was also huge for my husband to even try it. But the pate was out of this world, and you actually did the whole cooking demo and passed it around, and we all tried some. I think it was a hit.
I think I mean there was like 80 people or more or something like that then, and I remember I asked, I said, hey, so who here just ate organs for the first time? And everyone raised their hand.
Yeah.
And so we had nearly 100 people leave realizing, oh, maybe my mindset around this stuff is incorrect. Maybe it's not as bad. Maybe what it is I've eaten it prepared, in a way that doesn't make it taste good. Like, a lot of times, and this is what I talked about in that demo, is how people overcook it. And really, organ, like liver, is probably at its most delicious raw, because it's not very strong.
Mm-mm.
But as soon as you cook it, it gets a little bit more intense. And then if you overcook it, it gets really intense, and it gets that texture, that chalky kind of mouth feel that you don't want. And so it's really just about what works for you. You know what I mean? Like, so there's some people that what they do is they buy the raw liver, they they usually get it frozen, and then they cut it up into like little pill sizes, and they put it on a tray, they stick it in their freezer, and then after it's all frozen, they just throw it on in this like a Ziploc, and then keep that in their freezer. And then every day they take a few of them and just like swallow them, so they don't have to chew them. That's an option, but they're raw, and that's fine as long as it's coming from a healthy animal. And then some people, they'll take the liver and they'll do what I share a lot, which is you leave the liver whole. You still leave it frozen, because really, what is it that's overwhelming about liver? It's really when it's defrosted. That's when it's overwhelming. If it's frozen, it's just a hunk of something, right? You're just like, I'm
Yeah, it was no
just
big deal. Yeah.
yeah, right. It's just when it's defrosted that you're like, ooh, this texture, and it's like a what are those things that there's that little
The
kid's toy where
slinky.
you try to like hold it and it squeezes right out of your hand. That's what liver's like, right? It's just you can't get a good hold of it. And but basically, what I tell people to do is I just say leave it frozen, and then when you're making any kind of ground meat, whether it's turkey, chicken, lamb, beef, does not matter what, you just pull out the liver and grate it. Use a box grater, just grate a little bit of it right into the ground meat, mix it in. You keep your ratios low so they don't dominate. You make sure that the ground meat you're using is the higher ratio. So usually with like a pound of ground meat, I'll say do about 2 tablespoons of the grated liver, but maybe start with 1 and then get up to 2 and only go max 4. But that's it. So to 1 teaspoon or 1 pound, you wouldn't go past about 20%, which is about 4 tablespoons. So just do that, mix it in really well, and no one will know it's there. And then you put that liver back in the freezer, and it doesn't go bad. It's just every week when you have your ground meat, that's what you're doing. So there's lots of tricks you can do to hide it if you want. But the key, whenever we talk about any health modality, and I talked a lot of, it always kind of dumbfounds me this. I mean, I get it because it's very American. It's such an American philosophy of like, go big or go home. And the question we get all the time is, well, how do I know I'm really getting enough from your seasonings? Like, how do I know how much I should get? And I'm like, well, how do you know the bottle that says you should be taking 6 to 8 is correct? How do you know when Paul Saldana says you should be getting 2 ounces? What is he basing that off of? I mean, I've seen people, no joke, the woman's 5'2" and the guy is 6'5", and they're standing in front of me and they're both saying, yeah, we both take 6 capsules of organs. And I'm like, what? How is that possible? You guys are completely different sizes and have completely different needs. So there's this idea that we need to outsource the knowledge of what our body needs is really just absurd. And the idea that it's about like, I have to eat tons of it. It's like, there is no world where anything extreme in our lives is sustainable. Like, think of it. If you had to, if brushing your teeth took 30 to 60 minutes, think about how many people would have bad teeth. No one would sustain that, right? It only works because it takes 1 to 2 minutes a day, or after a meal, right? It only works. Like, so I'm a big fan of like, it's all about little movements. It's about the things that so I'm less focused on how much of it you do. I'm focused about how often. And that's what I encourage everyone to start thinking about, because as we mentioned at the top of this is like, we want this to be lifestyle. So what is it going to take for you to make these healthy habits lifestyle? Well, in my judgment, if it's a food, it's got to be easy and it's got to be delicious. It's got to hit both of those. And if it's really anything else, it's got to be a small amount that you can just do daily. Like, I don't hug people for an hour. You know what I mean? I hug them for, 30 to 60 or 90 minutes. You know what I mean? It's like, it's like, I can't think of one thing I really do aggressively that I can sustain. And
Right.
so I encourage people with their food as well, with nutrient-dense food like organ meats. That's why I like Pluck, because Pluck is microdosing frequently, because you're putting it on every meal, which is then cumulative effect. It adds up. I use the visual of like a sponge. Like, so if your body's a sponge and the food you're giving it is the faucet, right? If I drip that water onto the sponge, every bit of that water gets absorbed. But if I open that sponge up and just flood it what happens? Well, yeah, the sponge gets absorbed, but then tons of water starts pouring out on the bottom. And that's what you're getting, that expensive pee, right? That's when you're taking all these capsules and then you're peeing out most of it. You don't even know what your body's getting. But if we do little things like the eating the organ meats just a little bit each day, but we make sure that we're doing it daily, I mean, you reap all of it. The rewards are endless.
Yeah, so let's talk about the different flavors that you have. So this one is original. So um now I was reading the ingredients, and I mean it's basic ingredients, right? Onion, salt, smoked paprika, lemon peel, garlic, parsley leaf, mustard seed, and thyme leaf. Pretty simple, right? You wouldn't even think like what kind of organ meat like is in here. But if you look up a little further, it's liver, spleen, kidney, heart, and pancreas. Like I would never go eat any of that. Yeah, I did your cooking demo, but I walked over to your booth and I bought right the seasoning because I knew this is we love this. But what would you use the original for? Obviously, it's the first one you made, right?
Yeah, that's the first one we came out with. And the original used to be called all purpose because it really is like it's like Lowry's or Old Bay. You could put on anything. Um, it's got some smoked paprika and it's got a slightly smoky tinge to it. The lemon peel makes things kind of pop. So it's just got an overall nice all-purpose flavor. But we changed it away from all-purpose just because when we came out with more blends, I mean, honestly, they're all purpose. I mean, you could use all of them however you want. They're incredibly versatile. But what I like to point out is when we think about like spice blends, what is the first ingredient with any spice blend?
Salt or sugar.
Yep. Well, no, it's usually salt.
Salt.
There's
Yep.
there's usually sugar in it, but
Yeah.
for some of them, but it's always salt,
Hmm.
and that's because salt's cheap. And so that's one of the ways they get their margins, so that's the way they make sure that they make their money. And if you think about it, and one of the things that most blends are as well is they're very salty. And so kind of the way I like to describe it is like, well, most blends are salt with some seasonings. Pluck, the ingredients go onion is first because that's what helped
Hmm.
mask the flavor of the organs. Organs are second, because we want you to get as much as you can. And in the spices, we do 17%. I started out as 15 and then I was able to get 17. And I find if I go much higher, then we're going backwards. So then we become like I was talking about with those meat sticks, where now you can really taste the organ meat, and then it defeats the purpose because Pluck exists for people that don't want to eat organ meats, but want to benefit from them. So we have to meet people where they are. And 17%, like some people go like, well, that doesn't sound like a lot. But well, if you buy those ancestral blends that have the organ meats in them, those are only 7 to 10%. So this is quite high, actually. And the other thing is when you freeze dry an organ, you go from 100% down to about 21%. So you lose a lot in water weight. And then you powder it. They are extremely concentrated. And we have the original that you
Hmm.
showed. We also have zesty garlic, which that one's really neat because
Oh,
it's also AIP, meaning it has no nightshades and no
oh.
seeds. So if you're sensitive to those, um, that's a really good blend. And then we have
And it
spicy
works on
mild.
anything.
Yeah,
It
there you
doesn't
go.
just have to be meat, but it works on vegetables and all sorts of stuff.
It
So
really does.
I that's
It's incredibly
that's
versatile. Like I always tell people, like I created it because being a father, like I want to live as long as possible to be with my kids and their kids, hopefully, and then I want them to thrive. And so, really, what it was is like, well, how do I get these nutrient dense foods into their diet without a fight? That was really all. That was the motivation. I just don't. I talk to too many parents. They're like, oh yeah, I make pate every week, and I'm the only one that eats it. I'm like, well, that doesn't help anybody except you. But like but it's like, we gotta get these foods into our kids, and there's just, the palates are all messed up from all these ultra processed foods. There's picky eating. There's um, a lot of spectrum. If they're kids that are spectrum are very sensitive to flavors and textures, so then you get even picky eating from that. So there's just a lot of reason why we need to sometimes sneak these things in our food, into kids' food. But what I love, well, what I love about the Pluck, is we see a few things happen when families start using it. Is one, just by doing that you don't have to tell your kids what's in it. Just start using it on the food. And we use it on popcorn. We use it if we have pizza. Like, we use it in every way, because as parents, we all have those days that go sideways, and you got to order out, and you kind of feel like, oh, we're eating pizza again, or we're getting whatever people eat, Chick-fil-A, whatever it is. And I always tell them, just bring your Pluck to the restaurant, and then you will feel better as a parent, because then you're sprinkling that on that food that you're not happy about, and you can start to feel a little bit happier, because now at least they're getting Mother Nature's multivitamin as they eat that. So that's one thing. But then the other thing is that the feedback we get is, this is the only thing they'll use that night in dinner, is they'll start using Pluck, and people will tell us, my family wanted seconds that night, and everyone complimented me on the food, and they don't normally do. And it was like, yeah, it's because the umami and the organ meats make the
Mhm.
other flavors pop. And I think it's also, particularly with kids, their bodies are saying, oh, I need more of this. Like, their bodies know, just like what we talked about earlier. Our bodies have instincts around what foods we should be eating. And once we get a taste for those foods, your body will respond. So the kids tend to want it even more. And then we've been told feedback from practitioners who have recommended it to their families or clients. And we're getting told that actually kids that were very picky, as they start to incorporate Pluck into their meals, their palates start to open up and accept new flavors. And so they're getting less and less picky and more adventurous. And that I didn't know that when I created it. So it's very exciting to learn how not only the organ meats are providing more nutrition for people, but also how these very real food flavors are expanding the palates of the people that use it.
Yeah, it definitely you can food tastes better when I use it. I mean, I'll sprinkle it on steak. I know you don't need it on steak, but it adds just a little bit more extra when we're eating. Like, we always, my husband and I, like, this was really good. And it's like the only thing I used was pluck and some pepper. Like, and we grilled it. Like, there's, that's all there was to it. But it really does pop. It's really is good. I had heard you say one time about this spicy mild. You could use this as taco seasoning.
Yeah, absolutely.
How would you
Tacos.
do that? Let's say a pound of ground beef. How much would you
I
use?
would use about a tablespoon. With
Okay.
the 3 flavored ones, I use about a tablespoon to a pound of meat.
Okay.
So what you're holding up right now is a bag. We no longer carry those anymore. We now move to these. Well, even the shaker you're holding is a
Yeah.
different size. So we now do
Oh,
an 88-gram shaker. So this shaker is bigger, um, and it covers about a month's supply if you're using a teaspoon a day. It's a month's supply. And then we also have large family size bags. So for those people that have, because we have a lot of customers that have big families, homesteading families, and I always recommend just get the big bag, because then you won't feel bad using a tablespoon, and be like, oh, I
yeah.
just ran out in a week.
Yeah.
But yeah, about a tablespoon. And then I also recommend, so here's two things you can do. One, for an absolutely stellar steak. Okay, this is my favorite way to do a steak. Is you actually don't put any pluck on the steak. What you do
Okay.
is you just put a little salt and or pepper, if you do pepper. Put those two on the steak. Cook the steak however you cook it. Then what you do with the pluck is you compound butter with the pluck. So you take some butter, get it to room temperature, add your whole bag of pluck to it, saturate it, and then reshape it, with some paper, some parchment paper in the refrigerator. And then once that steak has been cooked, you just like slice a piece of that Pluck butter and let it melt right over that steak. It is divine.
The
It's so
the
good.
zesty garlic with a little Parmesan
Yep, absolutely.
is
Yeah, and that's
amazing.
the other thing
When you end up
is
and have a zesty garlic Parmesan, yeah, it's
oh,
really good
so good.
compound butter.
And and in that situation, all you got to do is either so you would add the zesty garlic, and then you could either grate some Parmesan into it, or you could even use nutritional yeast and get a similar
Yeah.
feel or effect. And then with the taco, with the spicy mild, if you're doing taco seasoning, or I mean, you're making tacos,
Mhm.
yeah, you use the spicy mild, and then you could add a little cumin because that's the one ingredient that is not in there.
Okay.
But you could add it, but you don't need it. What I usually do when I'm making tacos is I'll saute some onions. I'll put the pluck in with the ground meat, and then I think the only other thing I might add is just well, actually, I guess that's really it.
Do
I
do you
don't
put
really add much.
cilantro on
Maybe I'll
your
add a little bit
tacos?
more salt because we're kind of pluck is not that high in salt.
Mhm.
Salt's like our third or fourth ingredient. So we purposely keep it low because you can always add salt, but you can't take it away. And honestly, I think people get way too much because we forget that, sodium is in things too, right? So, for example, in a bell pepper, there's sodium, there's sodium in the vegetables we eat. And so it's also in, like, for example, in the zesty garlic, there's carrot and there's sodium in carrots. So it's like the food already has natural sodium in it. So I find when we get lots of flavor, we need less salt. But if you're being dependent on, the spice blends that are recommended online or that are sold in stores, then you're just getting lots of salt, and that's where they're tricking you into, thinking
And
it's flavorful, but really it's just salty.
and I appreciate that because I am someone that is a slower metabolizer of sodium. And so if I end up and I get too much, my fingers will, turn into like little sausages. So
Yeah,
even things
swell up.
like electrolyte mixes are so imbalanced. And that's why 90% of the time I don't use many of the common ones. But even with, like you said, things like seasonings to get, unless you buy, the individual seasonings, but this you're getting really that nutrient packed as well. But yeah, the flavor is just amazing
Ah,
with Pluck. But do you have any exciting new flavors coming out?
We do. So we have habanero lime coming out. That one's for people because everything we have out right now is very family friendly. Like even the spicy mild's not that spicy. It's very like that's why we added mild to it. We used to just call it spicy, but people were like, "This isn't that spicy," or they were scared to try it, and I'm like, "No, no, it's mild." So we're probably going to change that name to Southwest because I think that kind of describes it a little bit better. But then we're gonna have the habanero lime for the people that really want kick. It's
mm,
strong, the habanero lime. It's a little strong for me personally, but I've given it to some people now. It's their favorite. They love it because they want that heat. And then we're also gonna have chimichurri, a limited run chimichurri with bison organs in it instead of beef. And then we are gonna have cinnamon brain. So we're gonna have a cinnamon product that will have bovine brain in it. And this is just we're on a mission to try to help you eat whole animal. So we're not right now, what's as you mentioned, Sherry, in the pluck, it's the liver, the heart, the kidney, the spleen, and pancreas. But we don't want to stop there. Like we still want to get more into you. So we're going to be eventually coming out with more products where you're getting other parts of the animal. Um, and then you can kind of pick and choose, like for this meal, I used the seasoning. For the smoothie, I added the cinnamon brain. Like you can just kind of
mm.
mix and match throughout the day. Because, like I said earlier, it's not about, oh, I need to eat a tablespoon a day of the brain to really benefit. It's like, no, no, just every day get some in,
Mhm.
right? Just get something in because you're going to be getting something that you previously were not. And So I'm really excited about those because there's also this other thing that is kind of getting talked about a little bit more, but I'm hoping that we start talking about it even more, which is it's there's ingredients in some of these foods that are very popular right now, these kind of powders, and things that have flavorings in them.
Yeah.
There's ingredients that are not listed on the package. So, for example, if you ever see something and it says natural flavors and just that's all it says. Well, natural flavors is an additive to the product to give it some flavor, right? The flavor of whatever they're trying to get across. But for them to do that, first of all, the flavors are usually proprietary. So that the company that gives them the flavoring doesn't have to tell them what all is in it. That's where you get, like it came out many, many years ago. Like when you have natural flavors for strawberries, it's actually a gland from a beaver, the
Mhm.
butt gland. So that's they used to say, they were kind of uncovering where some of these come from. But either way, so natural flavors just refers to the flavor additive is coming from nature, but that doesn't mean it's truly natural. Like it's natural in that it's something that's found in nature, but it's still kind of manipulated and isolated. And, like we would never eat beaver butt, but yet somehow it's a natural flavor. You know what I mean? Like, it's not natural, but it's naturally sourced. And then artificial is just meaning that it's not coming from nature, it's coming from a lab, right? So, but these have hidden ingredients, and then they also have carriers. And what a carrier might be is like, so if you've ever seen those kind of drink foods and it says this has coconut water in it, but it's a dry product, right? So you're like, well, wait a second, coconut water, it's liquid. How is that in, I think layered
Yeah.
products have coconut water in it, right? Well, you have to have a carrier to do that. And so a lot of them are using like tapioca starch, and sometimes they're using maltodextrin. And so like a lot of the natural flavors use maltodextrin. So sometimes you're getting things that aren't listed. And a lot of times, like for example, with the maltodextrin, it's from corn. So it's still small amounts in the form of electrolytes at least, but if it's in a protein powder or in something that you're using a bigger scoop with, it's not small amounts, it's big amounts. And that means you're getting something that you may not want, your body might not like. And what's even more disturbing is you're not just getting it there, you're getting it in the other 5, 6, 10 products that have those flavors in them. And then you're getting that cumulative effect that I was talking about in a positive way with Pluck. Now you're getting it in a negative way. And that's why sometimes we see people that are like, yeah, I'm getting reactions because I keep drinking the same electrolyte drink, but I'm doing like 3 or 4 a day. And I've
Yeah.
seen these reactions. It's like, oh, well, that's because the natural flavor has got all these hidden ingredients in it, and your body's reacting to it. So more and more, I'm really trying to just move away from anytime I see a product that says natural flavors or any flavor additive. I try to move away from it. And to answer your
I was to say, I seen that
question,
comment about the cinnamon brain in
yeah,
coffee, and
to
when you
answer
said that,
Lisa's question, we have been testing it. So I sent it because right now we're in test mode. So I've been sending the new products to people. And I sent it. This is fascinating. So I sent it to someone who already put cinnamon in their coffee. And now they're doing the cinnamon brain. And they were like, A, they said it was delicious. But 2, they were like, I actually stopped using the brain and went back to just cinnamon to see if what I was experiencing was accurate. She said, I actually feel more focused when I'm using it. And I thought that is really interesting. So she used the brain, felt positive effects, like felt more focused from it, just felt like sharper. And then she's like, wait a second, is this placebo? She went back to cinnamon, just plain cinnamon, did that for a few days, then went back to the brain. And she was like, no, I really do feel different. Like, what is going on? And so she was super jazzed. And I was like, oh, that's like supports like. That's an ancestral concept, right? The part of the animal you're eating is supporting that part in you.
benefits, yep. Well, and that's where I was thinking, even, like the cinnamon in my El Rootery yogurt or, making an egg custard. Obviously, I can't
Ooh.
use, but yeah, when you said that cinnamon bread, I'm like, "Oh, that would be really good on that side of things to make like a dessert," or so I'm excited to end up
Oh,
and
yeah.
see you expand that side of the line too.
What's really cool too is so brain is something and set. I mean, the rest of the world still eats brain. It's a prized part of the animal. I mean, eyeballs as well. Those both are very prized. It actually is kind of has a natural sweetness to it, so it's kind of cool. Like so, those once it comes out and people are using it, you may not need to put any of your sweeteners in your coffee. You know what I mean? It's gonna add such a nice flavor and depth to the whatever you're adding it to that you may be able to pull back on some of those sweeteners, which that excites me because I just believe we get too much of that stuff, you know.
Definitely. Ooh, I'm excited to try the new.
And we
Yeah,
hope to. So just to give you everyone an idea of like where we want to go is like so. Our goal is to try to get as much of that whole animal in your diet, and so we really do believe in that like supports like concept. So we hope down the road to have like, for example, chocolate, so cacao, all very natural, nothing, no added flavors, which a lot, even chocolate ones still have flavors. um, but like, like a real cacao powder with like basic female organs. So to help with female fertility, um, or hormone balance, right? And then we have a male one as well that has like the testes and the parts of the animal that would be more for the masculine. So we're going to try to really once again, meet you where you are, figure out how people would use these, give them lots of flavor so you don't really think about what you're eating, but then you just reap the rewards.
I
That's
think I
our
wanna be
goal.
the little taste tester on the backside.
right? Yeah.
They
Sign
sound
sign us
amazing.
sign us up.
Yeah, we hope to do that. Actually, to your point, like we're trying to flesh out a program right now where when people subscribe for Pluck, that they get on a list where we do send them when, for example, when we go to first launch habanero lime, that they'll be the first ones to get little samples of it, things like that, to reward them for being that loyal customer or that regular customer, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, good. Maybe you will have these flavors at Hack Your Health this
I
year.
I will. Yeah, Hack Your Health is later this year, so that's I think is it November or October, one of those two.
November, yeah.
I absolutely should have them then. I would guarantee I'll have it.
That's exciting. Well, we want to be super respectful of your time. We don't want to keep you any later because we know you were gone this weekend and you're definitely an hour later than Becky and I. So we want to thank you so much for coming on. We would love to have you back. I didn't even get to ask you about um, the different seasoning sourcing, and because that's a whole dirty side of that people don't know about seasoning. So maybe we can definitely have you back and kind of dig in a little deeper on some of the things. You definitely align with what Becky and I believe, and Becky and I eat seasonally and fermented foods and things like that. So you know, you
Have
could
you have you guys been to Wise Traditions? Are you familiar with that conference?
no,
Oh, well, you got to check that one out. That one's going to be in Salt Lake City. So it's called Wise Traditions. It's put on by Weston A. Price Foundation.
okay,
And that's a really good one. I think you'd really connect with that one. And they're going to have their 25th anniversary. And I'm speaking at that one as well. I'll be speaking at Hack Your Health too, but or I'm doing a cooking demo. Um, but it's a really neat one because they really focus on traditional foods and how to properly prepare some of these things. Raw milk is a big push for them as well, and that's a good one. I'm excited about the Hack Your Health as well. But I wanted to just share before we do end, because because I saw Lisa mentioned as well. So we have the one we haven't talked about is we do have Pure.
Oh, yeah.
And I just want to quickly mention, so the Pure is just the organ meats. It doesn't have salt. It doesn't have spice and herbs. It's no different than the capsules. And that one is really an interesting one because it speaks to everything we've been talking about this whole time about how, well, if you are taking the capsules and you know you just want that maximum nutrition, we have that option for you, but now we're helping you eat it versus swallow it, right? So that's us walking our talk around that. But two, we know that we cannot make every seasoning for everybody. You know, we know that there's going to be some people that are like, hey, I want a no salt seasoning. Great. Well, we're probably not going to do that, just because I I like to have a little salt. I do believe it kind of helps pop, but I understand there's some people out there that don't do it. So what's powerful about the Pure is that you can combine it to your favorite seasoning. So you can make your own Pluck. Just buy the Pure and then grab your favorite seasoning and then add about that 17 or 20% of the Pure to that seasoning, and you will have made Pluck. So it's really us trying to give you the power to follow what you need, because we will. It's impossible for me everyone's needs. So, and the other cool thing about Pure is that it's incredibly versatile. So you can go sweet or savory, whereas the other three are really just savory. And so I'm always telling people, if you're doing a coffee, you could put a fourth to a half a teaspoon in that and mix it in. No, you won't taste it. If you're doing a smoothie, you can do the same. You can give it to your pets, for example, because a lot of pet food does not have organ meat in it, and it really should. Because if an animal was in the wild and they killed another animal, that is usually the first thing they eat is the organs. And yet most pet food doesn't have any of them. So you can sprinkle a little bit of Pure onto your pet's food and they will gobble up the food. They go crazy for it. But the key is it's not about well, the key is you only give them Pure, because Pure has, like I said, no salt, no seasoning. You don't give salt or seasonings to animals, so you don't want to do that to pets. I mean, so, but just want to throw that out there for people that the Pure, because it's 100% organ meat, a teaspoon of that is equal to 2 ounces of organs. So a little goes a long way. I always tell people, like, start light, like go even like just a fourth of a teaspoon when you're using the Pure one, because it's so powerful and so strong that you can actually push yourself, almost have like a detox response, because or even like have a burst of energy. So I'm always like, do it in the morning if it's your first time, and then start with smaller amounts and then ease up. But you never have to go over a teaspoon with Pure, because that's, like I said, 2 ounces. We don't need more than 2 ounces a day. I mean,
I love it. You know what I'm trying in the morning, right?
right? Yeah, with the coffee.
Yeah. Well, and I was one of the people that I was taking organ supplements, not even thinking. I had blood work done and they came back and they were like, "Oh my gosh, your iron is like too high. What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I'm not taking, wasn't even thinking about that." And it was like as soon as it dawned on me that it was that the organ supplement, done, not taking it anymore, and I went back to Pluck. So,
And have you gotten tested since?
I am getting ready to test it next month, so we'll see.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting to see if now you're at more of a balanced state. I mean, that's the thing, is like there are some people that they're very anemic, they need certain amounts. And for those people, I say, yeah, just get Pure. And that way, it's 100% organ meat, so you can control it. But I still like it better than the capsules because, for example, if there's any, if there's obviously some women on the channel listening and watching, but there's certain times a month where you may need more, right? Certain times a
Mhm.
month you may need less. When you have capsules, you can't measure that as well. It's hard to know what you're getting or not getting. But with this, you can really like just use less. And I'm really a big fan too of like, just if you wake up one day and please know, I'm talking about even the seasoning when I say this too, not just Pure. But if you wake up in the morning, let's just say you normally always put Pluck on your eggs, and you do it on your lunch, you did, but you always start the morning with Pluck, right? If one day you wake up and you're like, I don't know why, but I just don't want to put on my eggs today. Trust that.
It's
That
the
could be your
body's
body saying,
intelligence.
you know what, you don't need it today. And I would rather have you listen to your instincts than sell a product to you and get you just to use it all the time and take 6 capsules or whatever it is. It's like, I want you to listen to your body. And more times than not, we're not listening. And so when you have those instincts of like, oh, I just don't feel like putting on my eggs today, but James is always saying microdosing plus frequent use. I got to get that frequent use. It's like, well, no, I didn't ever tell you to not listen to your body. So if anything, let this resource be, because it's not a capsule, because you're eating it, like, let your body be the guide, not me, not your head, not some influencer on social media.
That innate intelligence and that muscle testing is huge, because you may even notice that if you're come down with an illness, you want more of the pure. That
Absolutely.
is the vitamin, right? So, well, again, we appreciate you. I do want to be respectful of your time. We are over that hour mark. I know we said that we were going to get you out of here in 45 minutes. So, we appreciate you though, James, and look forward to seeing you. I'll definitely look at that Wise Tradition conference.
Yeah.
But we'll see you in November for sure.
Thank you. Thank you again for helping to amplify the message, and thank you all for joining today. And please feel free to reach out. We're on socials at Eat Pluck, and our website is eatpluck.com. And I know you guys have a discount code you're sharing. But feel free, we love hearing how people use it. We love seeing authentic videos of people trying it for the first time. And we crave your feedback. I was sharing with the ladies before we got on. I was saying how, as an entrepreneur, we're very isolated these days. I don't work. We don't have like a headquarters. So I'm very much like in front of my computer in my own office, and I don't usually get lots of feedback personally. I don't know if people are watching listening to our podcast and what they think of it. And I don't get to see all the customer reviews and all that stuff because I don't have as much time, and there's someone else doing customer service. But so really, like, anytime anyone wants to message us or share on socials, tag us, we love it. We just really love it. And it helps us know that we're doing something that matters to you. So thank you all for, sharing in this interview today.
Thank you. You have a good sleep tonight after your conference.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank